Colorado improves to 9-3 with a 14-point victory over Cal State Bakersfield. Jake, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this game in particular because I don't think there's a whole lot you can take away, but it was nice to see Keyshawn Bartholomew knock down some shots. Lawson Lovering had some nice putbacks in this game. Your overall takeaways from today's game?
Well, meet the Buffs have sped past the Roadrunners. I think the biggest thing for me was Keyshawn Bartholomew had a pretty good game of ball security, got back into double figures. Lawson Lovering's kind of building up some confidence, especially with Jabari Walker out today. Got injured in the game. We'll talk about that in a second. Lawson's kind of showing some more aggression at the rim, which is, I think, huge because he plays a little soft. He's a freshman. He's not used to playing other big people because he was in Wyoming. Dominique Clifford had a really nice game again. I think Dominique Clifford has been one of my favorite players to watch this season so far. Evan Batty, every time he's on the floor, everything seems to flow. When he's off the floor, there is no offensive flow for the Buffs. But a really nice defensive game from Colorado, and that's huge because their defense at the start of the season had been a little shaky, but consistently over the last few games that have all been tune-up games, granted, they've been really good defensively.
You mentioned Jabari Walker got knocked out of this game 4 minutes in. Ted Boyle didn't have answers for us after the game. Mentioned that he's going to go see a doctor. So it looks like it probably was a head injury of some sort.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person in the arena that saw it happen. It happened right in front of where I was sitting on media row. And Jabari kind of caught an elbow out of a box out in his face. And he wasn't really quite sure initially if he was hurt or not. And he was just kind of standing there with his head in his hands. And then the whistle blew the other way. And then he kind of fell over, not necessarily all the way to the ground, but just kind of fell over. And one of the trainers was there to help him, and he went and sat in a chair. The team doctor looked at him and then went straight into the room. Covering the NHL, it looked like a dark room thing, concussion maybe protocol thing, looking at whether or not he had a concussion. So I don't want to speculate, but they're going to evaluate him on Monday. It did look like a head injury. It didn't look like it was a cut with blood or anything. So hopefully Jabari's playing, because without Jabari, they probably don't stand a chance against Kansas and several different Pac-12 opponents. Jabari has been, despite some bumps in the road, I still think Jabari's been their best player this year.
9-3 is the record that I think most of us expected.
Yeah.
He's somewhere in that range at this point. They haven't blown out as many teams as we expected this far into the season. How much does that concern you? Again, the record's kind of where we thought they'd be, but at times, they really struggle with the three-point shot at times this year. And Keyshawn Bartholomew, I think going forward, him correcting that like he did today would be kind of the key for this team going forward.
Even in a game like today that on paper looks like a raw blowout, where the Buffs had a 95% win probability the entire game, it didn't really feel like that. And towards the end of the second half, when Cal State Bakersfield is hanging around, you're kind of like, all right, guys, kind of time to go. So they really haven't had blowout games aside from that one game against Maine. And I'm going to spin it positively. I know that's a shocker for the Buff Stampede board, but I'm going to spin it positively and say this team, which did not have a lot of experience entering this year, has played in a lot of close games and have come out with wins. Granted, their opponents are not, blue bloods. They're whoever, but they've had those real in-game experiences with stakes, and they've had to come away with wins against these teams. And I think that's important to this team, that they've had been put in these situations that aren't, hey, you're up 30, what's it like to play up 30? No, they're playing up 5, and they're in front of their home crowd, and their home crowd's like, okay, here's the mutters, here's the anxiousness, and they've had to win those games. So I think there's a way to look at it positively. Certainly it's not the most positive thing that they can't cover or have barely covered any games this year.
Well, the women's team is about to start practicing behind us, but before we sign off, we got to talk about the Kansas game. Ojai Abaji is one of the top scorers in the country. They've got a ton of talent on that team. Remy Martin leads the Pac-12 in scoring last year, goes to Kansas, and he's their third or fourth option. So we were talking a little bit. I don't think they're going to be a double-digit underdog for this game, but if Walker's out, possibly. But it's going to be a tough game, and then you got 18 conference games after that.
Last time they hosted KU, I was sitting about 6 rows from where I am right now, and I ended up on the floor that day. There's been some jokes made by me mainly about what happened here 8 years ago. I don't necessarily expect that. This team isn't built like that. That Kansas team is certainly just as good as the Kansas teams we've seen in the past, as good as Kansas is every year. Remy Martin, he's a fraud. I don't really care about Remy Martin. I care about the other guys Kansas has. And if Remy Martin somehow has a good game, I'd be shocked, because KJ Simpson's going to make it his sole mission position to shut down Remy Martin. That's kind of what Eli Parquet is going to do. Eli Parquet has been targeting this game for a while. I know that. The Buffs I think the Buffs have to play their best game of the year to win against Kansas. It wouldn't necessarily shock me if they beat Kansas because, it's hard to win in Boulder for road teams. But in the same sense, this is going to be a really, really tough game, and I think it could be indicative of where the rest of their season goes if they can pull maybe, a split on some of those Pac-12 road schedules, those tough Pac-12 road trips, if they can maybe, nab a team here at home that they weren't supposed to. So I think that would be really big for them.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but things have been a little negative on the football side, so it was nice to come out here to the CU Event Center. Thanks for letting me tag along today, Jake.
I don't notice any of the negativity because I'm over here in Undefeatedville with the women's basketball team.